Sri Lanka's soldiers are once again out in force, a decade after the brutal civil war ended. It's a tough response to the Easter Sunday bombings, a coordinated attack targeting churches and hotels. With a local Muslim group behind the carnage, religious violence has escalated across this island nation. 101 East investigates whether faith is the new front line in Sri Lanka. Nilanthan Niruthan feels closest to God when he's playing a church organ. He accompanies Christian services throughout the capital, Colombo. On Easter Sunday, he was playing hymns here at St Anthony's Shrine when the congregation was rocked by an explosion.
Even now, just talking to you about it, I am shivering. I felt a jolt from my left side, about 20 meters from me. Everything went dark. There was dust all over the place. We couldn't breathe. I looked for my daughter and saw her running at the back of the church. I stood and called her name.
The clock at St Anthony's still marks the exact time the bomb tore through the church. Laxman remembers worshippers fleeing in a state of shock, panic and chaos.
We carried the injured out and we put them over there. There were corpses piled on top of each other. It was a bloody scene. Bodies shattered, broken limbs, blood covering hands and feet. It was a sight that was hard to see. The floor in the church was covered in blood and flesh. The sounds of the screams are still ringing in my ears. The way they screamed and ran out of the church, I can't get it out of my head.
It was only later that Laxman realised the magnitude of what had happened.
I didn't realize it was a bomb blast. I thought a transformer had exploded. I went to the hospital and I saw many hotel vehicles coming in. Only then did I realize that hotels had also been attacked.
More than 250 people were killed and 500 injured in the coordinated attacks by 9 suicide bombers. Along with St Anthony's Shrine, over 20 horrifying minutes, the bombers hit 3 luxury hotels in downtown Colombo. The group also attacked 2 other churches in the towns of Negombo and Batticaloa. It was St Sebastian's in Negombo that suffered the most casualties. Father Nurashan Pereira shows me where it happened.
The bomb blaster, he entered from this door with a heavy luggage like this. We saw in our CCTV camera, he came in that way and he was standing here. Then suddenly he made blast. Yeah. People were sitting on the pews here. The whole entire area with the body particles everywhere. Then with the smell of that blood, around 110 my close friends, my villagers died in this spot. How we bear that pain, it is unbearable thing. Because I can't see that.
At the time, Father Pereira was preaching at another church, but rushed to St Sebastian's when he heard his congregation was under attack.
This is my village. 4 years ago, I ordained as a priest in this church. So my friends, they are children and they are dear ones. They're all in this place.
You're a spiritual man.
Yeah.
Does such a horrific sight like that test one's faith?
It is very difficult to express. Personally, according to our hearts and mind, I felt that while he is getting ready to resurrect, he has taken these, my friends and my close friends, to the heaven like that.
Two days later, Father Pereira began burying the dead.
While I am burying them, it is very painful for me, but I try my best to give them a better service at last. This is not mass graveyard. This is, I arrange as each body for each place, each one separately.
On the other side of the country, in Batakaloa's Zion Evangelical Church, most of the victims were children.
This is the last song they sang at the Sunday school.
Kaushalya Santhakuma and her husband are showing me the last images of their two children, filmed just minutes before the bomb blast.
After this performance, the Sunday school teacher asked them, "Today if you had to face death, who will die for Jesus?" All of them raised their hands. Soon after that, the bomb blast happened.
Kaushalya says she's been unable to leave her house since their deaths. Her youngest child continues to ask about her older siblings. And belongings scattered around their home bring memories flooding back.
My son played the guitar very well. The guitar is still here. I cannot forget the time when we'd pray together as a family. He'd play the guitar while I'd sing. My daughter would laugh and dance with her younger sister. Whenever I think of that, my house feels so empty. There's no noise at all. I can't take it when I think of it.
Kaushalya says the cruelest thing is knowing that the bombings could have been prevented. Sri Lanka's government was warned repeatedly by local and foreign security agencies that an attack was imminent.
Those who knew about it could have addressed the situation. Then this attack would never have happened to the children. They failed us, but we can't do anything to them. God has to do that.
In late 2018, the Sri Lankan president fired the Prime Minister, claiming he was doing little to investigate an alleged plot to assassinate him. It led to 7 weeks of political infighting and a constitutional crisis until the Prime Minister was reinstated.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much for your time.
Champika Ranawaka is one of several cabinet ministers who say this rift between Sri Lanka's leaders resulted in them ignoring the warnings.
As a minister of this government, I must apologize. I am ashamed to bring this country to that kind of calamity, right? Actually, that president and prime minister and the whole government should apologize to the people.
The suicide bomber who coordinated the attacks, Zahran Hashim, was a firebrand cleric aligned with a little-known Muslim group called the National Tawhid Jamaat, or NTJ. Attracting thousands of followers through his online sermons, the 31-year-old pledged allegiance to ISIS shortly before the bombings.
Historically, the tensions between the Muslim community and the Christian community, that hasn't really played out here the way that it's played out in certain other parts of the world. That tells me that the people who did it ideologically were a lot more in tune with global fundamentalism than with a grassroots sense of persecution. So I would say it's quite possible that as ISIS loses ground in places like Iraq and Syria, they seem to be looking at South India and Sri Lanka, the subcontinent in general.
Nilanthan Niruthan is a counter-terrorism advisor to the armed forces.
There have been several signs that radicalisation, extremism is becoming a problem in this country, but for whatever reason, some were dismissed as being prejudiced and racist. And I think we were all so busy patting ourselves on the back for coming out of the war and building a liberal, politically correct society that we've really missed a trick here in terms of keeping an eye on our own safety.
Since 2001, Muslims have been the target of riots by Sinhalese Buddhist nationalist groups. Then, late last year, Zahran's followers were accused of retaliating, defacing Buddhist statues. The police investigation uncovered a large cache of explosives, which shocked Rauf Hakim and other senior Muslim politicians in Sri Lanka's government.
We ministers brought it up in the cabinet twice. In front of the President and Prime Minister, that all of us believe there is a very sinister force at work, and we need the government to take quick action to prevent something that could be much worse and harmful.
But he says nothing was done. It was only after the Easter attacks that security forces descended upon Kasankudi, a Muslim enclave on Sri Lanka's east coast, where Zahran founded the NTJ. The authorities arrested 100 people affiliated with the group and seized weapons and other materials which they say indicate the NTJ were well organised and planning further attacks.
The special forces have entered this building because they suspect a member of the NTJ was building bombs here.
Some local Muslim leaders say the raids are too little, too late, because they'd been warning the authorities about Zahran since 2016.
We knew that his thought and preaching and propaganda, and sometimes he misleading the youths. Some of us, we are believing he is going to little bit extremism. You know, his thought and delivering his speech and activities.
Did you report him to the police?
Yes, of course. Everyone knows. The intelligent people know, police know, everyone know. My question is, why you did not arrest him?
Muhammad Sabil leads an association which oversees 56 mosques in Katankudi. He says he was concerned about Zahran's online sermons, which called for the killing of non-believers. But Muhammad couldn't stop him building this religious centre downtown.
I strongly believe I did my part. But the police allowed them to conduct the program, then they did the program. So the security personnel must take all the responsibility in terms of this bomb blast and Mr. Zahran activities.
Mahmoud Hizbullah was the governor of this region at the time of the attacks. A political ally of Sri Lanka's president, he's been accused of not doing enough.
Before the Easter attacks, did you have any knowledge of the NTJ and their role and their activeness in this area?
Of course, they're functioning. No, NTJ as a religious group, not terrorist. We don't know about the terrorism. As a religious group, they are functioning. But only thing is they are extreme on the religion, very extreme. They no music, nothing.
In the wake of the attacks, a photograph surfaced from 2015 showing Hizbullah shaking hands with Zahran as two other Easter Sunday suicide bombers look on.
Definitely, Mr. Hizbullah and some other politicians, willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly, supported these type of extremist jihadist groups without, concerning the consequences of this thing.
A number of politicians have accused you of being too involved in the NTJ before the attacks. Is that a fair accusation? How involved were you?
This is completely liar. I totally deny these allegations.
Muslims account for 10% of Sri Lanka's population, and most practice Sufism. But in recent years, more conservative interpretations of the faith have taken root at Tawhid mosques.
Gradually, within 20-25 years, this community have very keen interest to practice Islam as a Saudi Arabia, as a Middle East, because within 15 years they have changed, the Muslim community, they have changed their dress.
Critics of Mahmoud Hizbullah say as governor he allowed too much change to the social fabric of Katankudi.
Does this town have a problem with radicalisation?
This radicalisation and especially extremism, we had some issues before, about 2 years ago. They are attacking the Sufi people and they were arrested, remanded. From that, we know there is that extremist religious group, Tawhid, that national Tawhid, but we never expected they are involved with the terrorist groups or name ISIS or whatever.
Muslims at conservative Tawhid mosques say they follow peaceful teachings and are now being unfairly targeted. At one of these mosques, we meet Muhammad Milha, who taught Zahran when the suicide bomber was in his late teens.
Zahran was identified as Tawhid from the beginning. And because he committed suicide, people are looking at us suspiciously. But not all Tawhid centers follow his line of preaching. None of us in Sri Lanka who are Tawhid align ourselves with Zahran. His action has affected all the Muslims in Sri Lanka, whether Tawhid or Sufi.
Muhammad says as Zahran became more radical, he left his mosque and started delivering his own hardline sermons, alienating imams across Katankudi. Then, in 2017, he went into hiding after a violent clash with a group of Sufi Muslims.
He has antagonized politicians and also antagonized Islamic groups who are against his teachings or who didn't follow his teachings. So he accumulated enemies on all sides because of his actions.
He says clerics now educate youth here about the dangers of extremism. But he fears Islamophobia and new aggressive security measures could discriminate against members of the Muslim community.
They are checking every house, and the Muslims are welcoming them and are prepared to identify the perpetrators. But if this situation continues, it's natural that the Muslims will feel victimized. So these actions have to be stopped. If we want to stop more people like Zahran being brainwashed, then we need unity and cooperation among all the races.
Under the state of emergency, 10,000 soldiers have been deployed across the country. And as during Sri Lanka's civil war, they've been given powers to search, interrogate and arrest anyone without a court order.
So they've been sweeping the same houses in this neighbourhood for the last 5 days, searching again and again and again.
Some Muslim politicians fear a whole community is being demonised for the actions of a few.
There needs to be education among our security forces so that they will not overdo or overreach their mandate and allow certain prejudices to create a sense of grievance among minorities. Certainly, governments should not become regulators of lifestyle.
But the government has imposed a temporary ban on Muslim face coverings. Islamic schools and sermons by clerics are now subject to tighter monitoring. Conservative members of the government also want bans on foreign Islamic teachers and burqas.
Aren't these solutions Islamophobic?
No. People's identity is their faces, right? And as a human, not as a Muslim, as a human, we all human should, reveal our faces. Muslim identity is not burqa.
Amid the clampdown, we hear reports of mobs attacking shops and homes owned by Muslims. We head to a town 2 hours north of Colombo, where there's been an outbreak of communal violence. An inflammatory social media post by a local Muslim has reportedly triggered the mob's fury.
Apparently a curfew's been imposed and people aren't allowed out, but we're going to see if we can get close to the site. There's some damage over there. You can see there's some damage over there. It appears as though somebody's thrown rocks into those shops.
When we begin filming a store owned by a Muslim man,
Look, video stop. Video stop?
The police try to stop us. They say showing such images makes Sri Lanka look bad. But a day later, there's no hiding the violence sweeping the country. 20 more villages are attacked. Hundreds of Muslim-owned properties are burnt down. The government says the only way to stop such attacks is tougher hate speech laws.
The violent attacks against the other religion, that cannot be accepted. We should totally eradicate that type of extremist groups, whether it's coming from Buddhists or whether it's coming from Islamists, whether it's coming from Christianity.
In recent weeks, there were demonstrations by powerful Sinhala Buddhist groups linked to past violence. They accuse Governor Hezbollah and 2 local Muslim politicians of being involved in the attacks. The men deny having links to the NTJ and quit their government posts.
We have to stop all this radicalism, not only Muslim, even Sinhala.
In solidarity, Rauf Hakim and 7 other Muslim ministers also stepped down. They all insist the government is failing to keep Muslims safe from persecution.
There is a general fear psychosis that is being exploited by certain unruly elements, certain xenophobic forces out there who survive on propagating their own brand of ideologies.
As faith becomes the new front line in post-war Sri Lanka, those scarred by the Easter attacks feel abandoned and wary of the future.
As Catholic priests, we are not nervous, but we are nervous about our people, our whole country. We need the harmony. My message is, try your best to keep close to your relationship with your community members. Those who are Buddhist, Islamic, Hindus, Catholics or Christians, just be together and to work together, that's all.
Amid tension and heightened security, St. Sebastian's Church in Negombo is slowly trying to recover with the help of priests like Father Pereira.
We are having that faith still. We never change. We're still with the love of God. My people is still with the love of God.
But for many parishioners, church will always be the place where loved ones came to pray and never came home. A parliamentary inquiry is investigating the security lapses that led to the Easter Sunday bombings. But Sri Lanka's president is refusing to cooperate. Father Pereira says the politicians are just as culpable as the suicide bombers.
I would like to say that it's a terror act by the government. They have done huge damage to our families, our community, even to the Christian society. These members should have to resign and go home. I myself, personally, I'm never going to vote them in future.
So you have no forgiveness for what they have done?
We have pardoned them, but I am not ready to accept them because they may going to do the same thing for our communities again.
Laxman says he's grateful that his family were not harmed in the Easter Sunday attacks. But for him, Sri Lanka will never be the same again.
How do you console a family who has experienced death? In one house, the father is alive, but the children are dead. In another, the children are alive, but the father is not there. In the church, there was one abandoned child crying without parents. Who will console that child? Politicians come and go, but the child will live with this sorrow forever. In future, I hope we can move forward and that all religions can prosper together in harmony.
For now, unity remains elusive in a tiny island nation of many faiths and ethnicities. Where bigotry often spirals into bloodshed, another war within could derail the prosperity built from 10 years of peace.